See, Jonathan Daniel Stoner recognized the dude inside the Hollywood magic shop, the fellow poring over the display plaque of artificial eyeballs. He was from the Omicron Cinema, one-off employees, always having 5 minutes to squander. Jack, as Jonathan had been dubbed in Nam by the few comrades, with enough intellectual candle power to add his first and middle names up to the sum Ofa Tepajoke. Hey, there's another guy here named Richard Whisk, but we call him Dick Lickeriokiok, pulled himself in. He saw that the fake eyeballs were pretty damned authentic. Nested in felt, they were glossed with some special shellac that made them gleam like real, living, wet eyes. Artificial substitutes, he thought, and his missing right leg sent a wholly imaginary local wince up to his brain. Say hey, he said. The dude from the Omicron looked up. As his face was hit by the combination of the sputtering fluorescence above and the dirty gray daylight sneaking in off Hollywood Boulevard, Jack thought maybe the guy had mononucleosis or something. Superficially, he looked like mere hippie fall, out a decade and a half out of step with the real world, but close up Jack saw that his face was the color Ofa kitchen sink-stained by coffee grounds. Above the face was hair skewed in a dozen directions, matted, unwashed. Below, a physique withered by hard weather or drugs or both. His eyes were sunken and glazed with a slightly stoned expression Jack had learned from the perimeter snipers at Nest Kilo Burn. Doubt Quinone alumni Hodges didn't give a shit anymore. And the hippie image wassailed by the overpowering miasma, no. Stink of patchouli oil wafting from every pore toward Jack like mustard gas. God, he hated the stuff. The dude had not quite connected yet, and appeared to be waiting for more input. I come into the Omicron all the time, Jack prompted. Last week I caught Dial M for murder and House of Wax. The two-way 3D glasses were a neat idea. Some management genius had stamped out dual lenses that were red, green for the black and white feature, and flipped to polarized lenses for color. The $2 show had been packed. It seemed to take entire geologic ages for the dude to react. Ah, yeah. He said in an arid, rasping voice, I seen you lots of times. I remember your walking stick. Yeah. He turned back to his treophilballs. Jack shifted his weight from his government tissue cane, leaning closer to regain the dude's attention despite the eye-watering, minty stench. What's next? Again the slow shift, as though the dude were crippled in a way Jack could not see. Always say handicapped, not crippled, Compton, the co, had advised with shit-eating sincerity for his discharge. At least, you fought your last battle, soldier. Compton had always had a supreme rectal, cranial inversion. Crippled, the dude arm wrestled his own memory and won. Ooh, bloody mama and Bonnie and Clyde, that's it for crime week. For the we, kenned we got Black Moon and, he plucked a wine, bottle green eyeball from the tray, and inspected it through a non-existent loop, turning it like a jewel. Some other Louis Malle film, My Dinner with Maybe. His voice was strep, throat dry, and sounded like a bad parody of The Man with No Name, or Atlantic City. One or the other. See you there, my man. He extended his free hand, and Jack found himself receiving his first power to the people handshake in 10 years. The dude's yogurt pallor was easy to dismiss as the cost off-toiling in the eternal darkness Ofa theater, but the paper-exture off-high's flesh made Jack think off-shaking hands with a mummy. The brittle skin seemed to crackle in his grasp, the bones beneath rearranging themselves arthritically like dried voodoo talismans. Up, down, once, twice, zomboid, and mechanical. Jack remembered the rack of artificial steel anvinile arms stored near the shelves from which the medics picked a leg to replace the one he'd lost. It had been like a tomb full of dismembered mannequins, the limbs and parts devoid of viscera, hollow, lifeless surrogates. The Omicron dude's dead grasp was what Jack thought shaking with one off those plastic-coated hooks would feel like. The dude unclasped, then produced from his pocket a slim card in a cashier's check pattern of waffled green lines with good for one free admission stamped on front. Yours, he said. Got to keep our regulars satisfied. Hey, thanks. Abruptly, Jack felt like a heel for mentally the dude. See you there. He sought the mate for the single glass eye he balanced in his palm, like pairing dearies for luck and marbles. Jack executed his stiff, clockwork 180-degree turn and left the store, the thump, click off High's work boot and cane in concert barely audible. He practiced to make it unobtrusive. He hated it when newly introduced people gawked at his right leg before looking at his face. He thought he could empathize with the way women felt about their breasts. On the boulevard, Somebody had pried out the bronze disc of Rhonda Fleming's sidewalk star, stolen it, leaving a crater. A muslin-bound black superstar, towering above the pedestrians on a hyperthyroidal pair of roller skates with day-glow orange wheels, swerved to miss the crater and nearly center, punched Jack. He and the cacophony of his gigantic ghetto blaster blended into the Friday swarm offwalkers before anyone could swear. He'd been wearing an army fatigue shirt with the sleeves ripped off. Jack steadied himself against the display window of the Hollywood Magic Shop and allowed himself in seconds off hemlock, pure racism. It primed him, erasing the good feeling of copping a free pass to the Omicron, and as he walked through the grimy, humid smog and the abrasive tide of boulevard flotsam, he escalated his irritation into unfocused hair-trigger anger. Everyone around him on the street was loping along, trying to look better than everyone else. Jack's cane attracted no notice on the boulevard. He was a mundane diversion in the midst of the jarhead Marines on leave, the slutterpratine heartbreakers leaning on the bus stop posts, the meandering gaggles of Japanese tourists, the smug pairings of smartly leathered punks and overconfident faggots, the Hollywood vets with their straight stares, the better to avoid the pushy Scientologists just this side of Las Palmas, the garbage pickers and shopping bag loonies. The walk-off stars seemed perpetually encrusted with a gum-o-vomit offspilled drinks and litter, like the sticky floor of a porno theater. Along the maze of blaring rock noise and Iranian jewelry shops, step-in eateries displayed steaming, greasy triangles of pizza, or the oily components of colorless hero sandwiches, or peculiar platefuls off what looked like Korean food, varnished for presentation, reminding him of those eyes, preserved fakely realistic surrogates. The lavender spire of Fredericks pierced the waistline of the boulevard somewhere behind him, a centerpiece to the whole tacky, vulgar carnival. Uvefitir last battle, crip. The words fried into Jack's brain, spoken too many times in too many subtle ways. The sentiment ate into his calm like fluoric acid into the fuse Ofa beer. Bottle bomb. This place could reliturge you down. He decided the Omicron pass was not snotty charity and then forgot about it, feeling a little better. His grimace into the mirror told him he should shave more often, pay more attention to his hair. But what the hell, he wouldn't care so much half an hour from now. The prostitute pulled her sweater over her head. Her corner was by the House of Pancakes on Sunset Boulevard, and Jack always thought there was a terrific joke in that somewhere. The first thing she looked at while she stripped was the flesh-tone plastic and metal ornamentation of his right leg. Traveling light, M16 on rapid, fire, clips in his shirt, rifle grenades taped across his thighs. Bravo Patrol's point man was 50 yards back, sauntering down the dead center off the jungle trail because he knew the anti-personnel mines were salted slyly into the border of the path where careful soldiers might tread. They all knew across from him his counterpart, Teller, eased ahead to help flush out snipers on the opposite side of the path. He and Teller were Bravo Patrol's big mavericks. Teller collected VC ears and sometimes their balls. The crumping sound of 60mm mortar fire was starting to deafen them. Time to be careful. She crushed Autan unfiltered Lucky Strike and said, "They almost took a packet off earshot, lover." He saw the wings off-lab curving over her kidneys. Her ass seemed a yard wide. "No, they didn't," he said, rehearsed, "and yes, it all still works." He waited naked on the bed, exposed. "Talkers are always comedians," she said as she descended on him. The roots off, her henna'd blonde hair were brown, ears pricking. Seeing that stupid bastard Teller and realizing and forgetting his craving for a smoke, and using up 3 more seconds ripping a grenade loose and locking it into the muzzle of M16. No time, wanting to scream there right above you, stupid asshole. No time, stock to shoulder, finger to trigger. The weapon kicks and the tree 30 yards over mushrooms into an orange blossom off-fire and screaming Kong. Teller's mouth drops like a stag part of Patsy's in surprise, and he sprays the tree above uselessly with slugs. The whole goddamn jungle comes alive with the nasty, ill, spattering racket of weapons fire like a crazy typewriter, noise, or water dripped into a pan off hot bacon grease. Not like movie gunfire, the flaming tree lights up the entire perimeter and he is exposed, has to buy 5 seconds, has to retreat to cover while Bravo charges to catch up, backing gingerly through fronds onto the trail. Feeling his foot fall short, he makes one step blind because he's watching Teller's head leave his body. It spins. There was flat, sour bile in his throat. The whore had too much mileage on her and was unappetizing with her duds off. He felt unaroused, and with a fatalistic devotion to duty she worked to excite him reflexively, to make his own body betray him. It became boring, repetitious, like a grindhouse stroke flick. He felt cold lying there, watching thin smoke from the ashtray unreel toward the ceiling. Nothing happens until he lifts his foot, then the mine pops beneath him, smacking air concussively through his head. He doesn't feel the rifle grenade taped to his thigh explode. No details, just a stab off, heat and bright light. The dispensary lights hurt his eyes more when he awakes, 4 days later, thinking Bravo Patrol did his job for him. She pushed off him immediately and left her sweat on one of his bathroom towels. "Have a nice day," he said to the empty room, watching daylight fade across his barrack. Neat arrangement of serviceable furniture, of home-made bookshelves and desk. He clicked on his TV remote, a do-it-yourself project he'd tinkered together 2 months ago, and browsed the free program guide he habitually picked up every Wednesday at the Mayfair Market. Automatically, for a giggle, he thumbed back to the community classifieds. Beached Manatee Shelley Winters uses the Grand Canyon for a toilet. Signed, the scumbag. If you wanted a good barometer of Hollywood's blue, holler weirdness, you turn to the community classifieds, suitably on the inside back page of the TV schedule, and printed on pulp stock so cheap that your reading fingers were black by the time you got to the good stuff. For those too illiterate to make the letter column of the L.A. Times, too straight to ever consider underground's now facetiously termed the alternative press. Jack thought with contempt, another sellout, too normal and mundane to ever air their petty beefs anywhere but in a playroom or a bar with a constantly burbling television set. The community classifieds were a steam valve and a cheap thrill all rolled into a single weekly page of lunacy. Any local nonentity could phone in a 2-line ad or editorial comment for free. The paper always had 2 minute run, and the week-to-week progressions offered by the column's stalwarts people who by journalistic squatters' rights appeared regularly, trading barbs under obnoxious pseudonyms, were more entertaining than any diversions offered by the Cursed Tube. Come back to the 5 and dime, Zarathustra. Non-white athletically inclined punk-oriented animal lovers handicapped okay desired for proto-fringe videos. Selected for an audience. Flat fee. Working name director. No amateurs or freaks who answer ads like this -685-8299. Does anybody out there have one off those rubber chicken enema bags so popular in the 1950s? Ha, thought so. Dr. Slee's house noise cassettes. Keep your canaries company while you're not at home. $7. 95E 757-4414 Eves. Frustrated military, used athletes, and adventurous college boys call Sid. 556-4348. Jack's eyes skimmed past 2 familiar words, then backtracked to get the whole message. The Omicron Theater should pay us money to attend such a moth-eaten, seat-sprung, paint-peeling, roachin-fested garbage dump. Flake away, hip pie scum D.W.E. South La Brea. When he rose to pull a beer from his tiny refrigerator, he rechecked his shirt pocket, forgetting his temporarily unlovely aroma. The free pass was still there, and that decided him for the evening. His car, a 1972 Comet with the pedals displaced to the left, was still undergoing a mileage checkup in the shop, but that did not put the Omicron out off High's range. He could still walk, by God. The Omicron reminded Jack of a kid's bedroom. To an adult, a non-initiate, it looked like a trash heap, but there was a comforting order inside for those who cared to delve past the superficial. It would never appeal to the Rolls-Royce trade. It was not quite as bad as the Kung, Fusli's pits off downtown L. Which looked as though they had been raised by Mongols. The Omicron was, in essence, a normal theater stripped down for combat, its patrons exemplars of the no-frills class. Jack assumed the seats were veterans' awfully fortunate film emporiums long since demolished. The heavy draperies, colorless with dust and age, had been hanging around since 1930. The concrete floor had been scoured clean off carpeting ages ago and remained unpainted. $2 customers spilled an awful lot of crap. During intermissions, the auditorium lit up from behind. 2 emergency floods on battery banks comprised the sole interior illumination. They were mounted high on the corners of the projection booth like devil horns, and when they clicked on, they threw long shadows from the heads off, audience all the way to the foot of the disused state in a silhouette mimic of a churchyard's listing headstones. When those lights clicked off, you'd better be sitting. Jack knew, because here there no niceties like usher bulbs on every other row, or twinkling blue landing lights on the aisle like he'd seen at the Vogue Theater. Even the exit signs on each side off-screen were long dysfunctional, and if the snack bar had been a restaurant, Jack would have found a grade C certification ditched behind the clotted Coke machine. He suspected that the roaches flatbacking it, feet up in the yellow light of the candy counter's display pane, were victims off popcorn. The Omicron was practically Jack's only acknowledged watering hole. Like him, it was tatty in patches and looked broken down, but he could pass its portals and trade nods of recognition with the dude he had met at the magic shop, and that was important. He was a regular here, an initiate, and he appreciated that the caretakers of this dump, unquote, took pains where they counted, with the programming and the quality of the projection. Oh, yeah, and admission was still $2 Jack's terrific feeling of renewed well-being evacuated through his bowels and good Niwen. He plunked down his free pass at the booth and looked directly up into the varnished wine bottle, green eyes off new Omicron employee. From the third row could barely see the screen. The crash and bash din of the gangster movies could not etch his concentration even in the darkness of the theater. The tarpaulin shapes in the orchestra pit became ominous, the auditorium an ambush waiting to happen. He slouched in his seat. His mind chased logic chains like a lab rat on the scent of good, putrid Limburger cheese. None of the available conclusions eased his shock by a mote. He had shuffled dumbly through the lobby, knowing that to meet the gaze off candy, counter-employee, the dude, would now be to let the fear engulf him to the upper lip. Those flat, glassy stares, unwavering, unblinking, like the appraisal of a puff adder, came out of a tray in the Hollywood magic shop. The Kong, a supernatural hive intelligence, they could blank a grunt's brain, make themselves invisible. 12-year-old commandos were kicking President Johnson's butt by proxy. The fear, it could ambush you in the dark. On the screen, Bruce Dem, 12 years younger, indulges a sadistic little flash of ultra-violence. Homosexual rape. The Omicron staff, not shell-shocked orts from the dead age of the flower child. Just dead, perhaps. Certainly they seem to feel of death and smell off it. Fragile, with their mushroom, pale, cool-bleached skin and their fixed, shellacked eyes. Stinking of aftershaves, colognes, patchouli, any heavy oil or preservative-base off-alcohol, moving, like the bebe palm lizard found at the base of a tree, the roiling chaos of maggots revealed when he flipped it over. The legless grubs filling the stomach cavity, their mad dining was what made the lizard appear to be moving. Its flesh remained as an envelope, papery and stiff, a lizard, shaped to hide theft-offen trails long consumed. Its eyes were gone. Crazy. Motive, you dumb gimp, yelled his mind. Motive, the a flea-trap cinema overseen by ambulatory dead people, or whatever the hell they were. Certainly not to derail the world and the American way. Robert De Niro, having spent an hour off-screen time evacuating his skull with airplane glue, is discovered amid the marsh reeds, his spike in the dirt, a rubber lanyard still making the dead bicep bulge. Asnap decision in the dark? Jack knew had to investigate to resolve. It was what he had always done. He found temporary satisfaction in the glow bouncing back from the movie screen. 1 row back and 5 seats over. A black guy swaddled in a stinking fatigue jacket snored gutturally, and no one told him to shut up or get out. In some of the wing chairs, the ones affording an uncomfortably slanted view of the screen, more wine heads dozed unchallenged, their feet on the chairbacks. The others, this far forward guys with dates generally holed up farther back in the auditorium, seemed totally narcotized by the film. The date duos, the monster, movie prep pies, and the good citizens would scurry out during the end credits, while the snoozing derelicts and street dregs of Tinseltown waited to be ushered out under duress. For a couple of bucks over the flat rate for Ripple, a spongehead could blow an entire day sleeping out of the weather and sucking up Rasa-moving pictures. Where did one find zombie fodder? Just haunting the Hollywood streets like gray wraiths, filthy blankets rolled under one arm with hollow eyes and vacant stares, hanging, gout long after the sideshow freaks and hookers and male hustlers vacated Hollywood and Sunset and Santa Monica in the pre-dawn. One more bag lady, one more shopping. Cart loon or religious burnout orse, the panhandler would never be missed. Intermission came, and with it a few more truths. He slouched down when the auditorium floods blinked on, actually recoiling from the light because he did not wish to be singled out. The decision to stay after closing had already been made. During the second feature, he must have touched the pistol in the pocket off High's peacoat 100 times to ensure it still existed. He packed it around with him almost all the time now. If trouble leapt out off trees tonight, it was reasonable to allow that he could win a physical contest against the Omicron's scraggly human cinders, even with a missing leg. Their bones must be like communion wafers now, he thought, his hand seeking the gun unconsciously again. It was a luxuriously heavy .45 automatic, marine feel, issue, and his practice had been to pocket it whenever he traveled on foot. Lately it lived in the pocket of the peacoat all the time. The sucker ate an 8-round clip, and an extra slug was already in the chamber. It had frequently proven a red-eyed deterrent to muggers, at least those marginally human. Provided his thesis was true, even artillery like the monster. .45 could not kill someone already dead, but it sure as hell was capable of blowing off arms and legs and heads at medium range, and they couldn't chase you if they didn't have legs. Provided he could retreat efficiently without one, too. He considered his chances as the second film, Bonnie and Clyde, began to unreel. During one of its chaotic shootouts, Gene Hackman was about to get iced by the feds. Jack changed seats, edging closer to Thewol Offcurtain on the left side off auditorium. As long as he was not in the firing line between a viewer and the luminous rectangle of the screen, he would never be noticed. He knew how to walk in the dark, even theater, dark, even leaning on the damned cane and humping his surrogate leg along. Once on the fringe of the farthest row of seats, he edged toward the nearest dead exit light. The suffocatingly musty curtains smelled like some abandoned library, and his nose tried to sneeze. He held. In another minute, the Erlilavers would be hurrying out. He avoided the stair railing leading to the push-bar exit and angled behind the screen and looked up to be confronted by a reverse tight-close up oaf a face 30 feet high. The boxy, flat black speaker apparatus, its horizontal planes steeped in brown dust, directed its salvo away from him and out through the million tiny perforations in the screen. Out toward he felt a mad, directional itch skittering from his hairline, around one eye, over his nose. Stifling his cry of reaction, he slapped away the cockroach before it could hide in his mouth. Yeah, the curtains were probably alive with the goddamn things. He thought off them congregating in the trough of the filthy coke machine after closing, leaving their egg cases in the drains, or mating in the cigarette butts and piss-filling Thejon's 2 urinals. Did roaches mate, or were they, what did you call it, parthenogenetic, hermaphroditic? He hated the damn things the way he hated breaking spiderwebs with his face, the way hated the monster leeches and vampire mosquitoes he'd met across the ocean. Or rats. Above him, the screen lit up with an end credit roll. Backwards, he hunkered down and thought about rats for a minute. The Grunge Theater in Chicago is a sleaze pit, cold as a corpse locker in the bosom off annual blizzards. Jack and Tufalo renegades from Basic are celebrating their first ever weekend passes by touring the Windy City. Their passes are 35 hours old. Now they are in attendance at a triple Bill Offskin flicks aimed at the midnight tid on beat off crowd. The theater is in the middle of a burn. Doubt DMZ called Division Street. Swindler, Grandla polluted on a fifth of George Dick vs Finest 80. Proof paint remover, Rye, dubs Chicago the shitty city, tittering at the rhyme. Ford, equally blitzed, elaborates by making Chicago the puckered red asshole of the universe. Jack's laugh goes cheesy and sour. He pulls his boots up off the floor because he has spotted the rats quietly on the discarded candy boxes and popcorn tubs. In the middle film, a cow-like naked blonde accidentally sets fire to her bed with a smoldering reefer. The fire is a special effect that must have planed away half the film's $1. 98 budget, and she and her muslin-bound Latino buggers flee the frame as a line off-jet gas fire sweeps along the bottom of the picture. Jack hears the squeals from the screen and realizes they are not part off soundtrack. What must be dozens of rats have been surprised by the sudden flood off light back there, behind the screen. Unpleasant. The rodent army retreats into the dark to mingle with the audience. He watches a crushed soft drink cup manipulate itself patiently across the cold stone floor. He gets up to leave. Could there be rats in the Omicron? In California, maybe mice. A voice in Jack's head told him he was obfuscating. Rats did not worry him. The house floods snapped on, and the Ristov patrons herded noisily out. Jack waited, secreted behind the hanging curtains, weight at ease on his fake leg. The exit door crashed shut, sheet metal hitting a wood jamb and rattling a loose push bar, and did not open again. For 60 seconds he breathed shallowly, listening. Then he inched forward until he could see the auditorium under the glare-off floods. There were perhaps 10 derelicts out there, still snoring. Maintenance movements and sounds echoed toward Jack from the lobby area. Then somebody, the new guy, the one with the bottle. Green eyes moved down the aisles, waking the bums up. Excuse me, may you have to leave now. Jack watched his progress, the same speech for each sleeper. They grunted. Some got the speech twice before reluctantly shuffling out. One nodded and resumed sleeping. The black guy in the fatigue coat. The Omicron employee moved to the next customer. Like shabby, ragtag Conestogas lurching west, they dragged themselves out, all except Fatigue Coat, who had been sitting behind Jack, and to whom the new employee Graduella circled back. Behind Jack, the curtains rustled, moving themselves. Drifts of thin dust sifted down. It might have been the vacuum effect off, front doors closing. He looked and saw the Omicron guy standing mutely over Fatigue Coat, watching him sleep, watching with those fixed eyes whose pupils never expanded or contracted, watching with the head, cocked attitude and characterless gaze of a praying mantis surveying the struggle of a future meal. The other made his way toward the pair, dressed exactly as Jack had seen him in the Hollywood magic shop. He had a baseball bat, budget security as well, Jack thought. The curtains were still moving, wafting as if in an unfelt warm breeze. There was a faraway, crackling paper noise when the dude swung the bat against the back of Fatigue Coat's neck, made a sound like 5 pounds off a stake smacking a linoleum floor. Jack felt a sympathetic local jab in the area where his backbone met his skull, and the black guy did a forward roll to slump out offside between the seats. They bent to lift him, and he came up as slack and limp as an abused mattress, another roach dashed in a zigzag across the back of Jack's hand. His reaction came an instant too late, and when he tried to brush it away, hit the curtain, and 3 of its buddies fell from the folds-off cloth to the floor and scurried away. The crackling, paper sound, like hundreds of tiny, drumming fingers, was noticeably louder. When he looked back, Fatigue Coat was being laboriously dragged toward the orchestra pit. Each Omicron dude had a leg, and a dark, wet, erratic smear was left in their wake, shining up from the concrete slope of the aisle. It was something the regular patrons would never notice anyway. It sounded like rain, and Jack thought of the Fleep Pit movie house in Chicago. His vision off, movement in the orchestra pit resolved into a roiling whirlpool of scuttling brown bodies. Not rats, roaches, millions of roaches swarming over each other in the dark maw-off pit. Not the killer cockroaches, the 3-inch-long monsters that could fly merely the tiniest household vermin, multiplied a billionfold before his awed eyes. And around his feet, he saw them move in quietly scratching, brittle brown masses across the floor like a shoes. Deep-tied off-sentient mud. He thought off them detouring up his plastic leg, antennae probing. The hairs on his good leg prickled, he held. The leeches, the Stuka mosquitoes, the Gotham crates had been far worse, he told himself. The .45 automatic, polished to a dull sheen by the pea-coat pocket, came out now, shaking in his hand. The shaking pissed him off. He thought off them living in the seat cushions, the curtains, the cracks in the floor, the moldy planking and rafters, the termite, hollowed superstructure, more than enough breeding room, even if one did not count the snack bar. The dude and the new employee heaved Fatigue Coat over the lip of the orchestra pit into the riotous, churning sea of chitinous bugs. He seemed to hinge at the waist, like one of those backward, jointed dumb mice used for the big jump in the cheapest films. He did not look real, neither did the sheer mass off-waiting roaches, at least 3 vertical feet of them, he saw now, swarming near, little the rusted brass rail off the pit. They embraced the body hungrily. The last part off him to submerge into the attack off brown, bullet-like forms was his foot, toes protruding from a demolished sneaker wound with dirt or friction tape. Then he was gone, gobbled up, and quickly. The hammer off quivering, .45 was cocked now. The display below forced Jack to grip the gun tightly in his fist and cock it with his free hand. That was when he fumbled the cane. It dropped away, missing his grasp, and hit the edge of the stage, somersaulting into the open, its rubber street tip bouncing it off the orchestra pit rail. It clattered to the bare concrete floor, loudly. The exit door was still at hand, but Jack did not try to stump toward. He had heard it being chained shut from his hiding place. They came for him behind the Omicron screen, clumping in cadence up the exit steps like a 2-man funeral procession, and found him backed against the wall, pistol rigidly thrust out before him, a scepter of power, a talisman against evil. No closer. His voice did not quaver. The gun was now steady. The threat was defined. His good leg held him locked to the stone wall. The new employee's voice croaked in monotone. "Excuse me, beauty, you have to leave now." The bottle, green, glassy eyes stared at the dead space between Jack's head and shoulder. Jack could not trust the light, but he was certain that the dude, the elder employee, smiled at him when Jack uttered the single syllable, "No." The grin was dry and lifeless, a manipulated, puppeteered thing, matching horribly with the fixed phoniness off, eyes, and the memory of fragile, cured, dead flesh. He moved toward Jack purposefully, grin fixed, eyes fixed. Second warnings were for bad movies, too. Jack cut loose his bonus cartridge. The boom of the shot knocked more dust out of the curtains. It resonated inside the girderwork and made the steel cables securing the screen vibrate. Jack flinched. What even an unmodified .45 bullet could do to a human skull at medium close range was something seldom depicted in those movies either. Basically, it made a little hole going in, an ahuja hole coming out. Frequently it could decapitate the aggressor. That was how Teller had bought it. A perfect black dot appeared on the dude's forehead, just over the right eye. The hair on the back of High's head flew apart violently, followed by a cloud of brown, metallic chaff like pulverized cardboard. It glittered in the air and settled. Then roaches began to boil out off forehead hole. The grin stayed. The dude took another step forward. Jack fired convulsively after that. Theeks, bloated like Zircon struck with a steel hammer. Dead teeth were blown east like stubs off shattered chalk. The head disintegrated into flaking quarters. Roaches flooded out from the neck stump. Jack swung, dropped sights, and put a slug through the new employee's outstretched hand. No grimace of impact, but it spun him, and he lost balance and tumbled head first through the curtains into the orchestra pit. His buddy, Sans head, was still tracking mindlessly toward Jack. Jack squeezed off and the point. Blank blast tore away everything below the dude's left kneecap and sent it flying through the movie screen. He crumpled. Freed bus scattered for cover, hurtling along pole, vaulting, actually, click. Thump, he made it to the exit door without falling on his face. Roaches were crawling up his legs now. The case, hardened padlock hasp and tempered chain were no match for the bullet that kicked them apart, and Jack shoved the door, doubling it back against the outside wall with a crash. Outside, the paving was slick with rainwater. Puddles gleamed back at him in the trapezoid optum light surrounding. His elongated shadow, good. They hated water. He limped out into the alley. He never saw the new employee flailing pathetically in a waist, high quicks, and off-chewing insects struggling to stand. Nor did he see the new employee's seams burst to feed the flood tide now cascading over the overexertion. Fallen walking stick, testing, tasting, analyzing. Angrily, the .45 burned in his fist. The loss of the cane pushed him into at least your last battle, soldier. Some guardian angel had abandoned a split half of broomstick in a garbage dumpster, and that helped get him home. He stopped often to slap at himself, and after about 10 minutes he heard sirens. The bottle of George Dickel's finest on the countertop was thoughtfully notched, so a potential drinker might view how much stock remained. Of the 8 ounces inside when Jack burst into the apartment, 4 vanished before he even sat down. His leg relaxed at last, and he might have screamed. His breath whooshed out, and he bolted down another shut straight and neat, letting his gut warm. Sweat dumbed up his clothing with dampness. He rested the .45 on the table, next to the open bottle, and in a few silent minutes he felt better, more relaxed. The gun had cooled, he thought. Bam, ham, bam, and the duda popped open, and there bam. They were a hive intelligence like the Kong, thriving under our noses, living off our garbage, our human garbage, and good old Jack Danib Stoner had found out. He took another pull from the bottle, a slower, killing slug, he thought, looking again at the gun. A hair was stuck to it. Absently, he moved to pluck it from the metal. It moved. His insides jumped. It was protruding from the barrel, brown and thin and wavering, and it was not a hair. He thought he saw a madly scurrying roach speed out off mouth of the gun. Quickly, he slapped at the bare table surface and strained to check the underside. Nothing. It was his imagination dropping into overdrive, fueled by the octane off whiskey. Nothing. The gun was clean, but those little suckers sure run fast. He did last rites for the bottle and shuddered. Then, grimly, he started on the leftover beer. Soon he fell asleep on the sofa off High's neat, ordered, vermin-free apartment. And when Uoknuthi had found him, he had ferried their scouts home with him, and now they had him. His good leg ached horridly. He remembered the aluminum crutch, ugly and unused, still in the foyer closet. Before being fitted with his plastic leg, he had learned to use the crutch as a surrogate. He tensed before jerking open the closet door, and something tiny and brown dashed out of sight behind the jamb. He was certain he had seen this one. He grabbed the crutch, and again his peripheral vision noted quick, dark movement. But in the time it took to turn his head and focus, it was gone, hidden, out off light. The countertop, leaning on the crutch, he humped feverishly across the room, more nothing. Damn it. Frustration and panic lay in wait. The pistol was still on the table, but not as he thought he had left it. Now its barrel was pointed at the chair where he had sat drinking. He knew there were at least 3 or 4 slugs still in the clip, minimum, and never in his life had he gotten bombed enough to leave any weapon idly aimed at himself, loaded or no. From the cabinets, the spaces beneath the counter tiles, the interior of the stove, they monitored him. It was a reasonable assumption. He stopped the childish bullshit of trying to catch them and started to proceed methodically. He smacked a spare clip into the gun and reloaded the exhausted one before sliding everything back into the peacoat. He pocketed all the change he could scrounge. To leave became imperative, not to return to the Omicron, oh no. Not unless one wanted to spend a few months posthumously helming the snack bar, but to get clear of the apartment before they had an opportunity to catch him napping. The quiet walls unnerved him now, pressed against him with the weight of a million tiny, impatient bodies. Most likely they were right above his head and he could not see them, like Teller. On his way to the door, he thought he'd spotted one on the tabletop, maybe the one from the gun. He ignored it. He would never be fast enough to get the little mothers, but he could be fast enough, sharp enough, still to get out to survive. The night was still black and set. Droplet patterns from the AM. Mist accreted on the metal off-high's crutch. He walked. He proceeded methodically with nowhere to go but away. He was in the crosswalk at La Brea and Santa Monica when the headlights nailed him. An oil-slick, black Buick Regal, filled with the resplendence of a Coke, tout pimp pilot and a pair of chromed hookers, stopped with its front tires over the white line. Jack saw that the riders were pretty jolly for 3 o'clock in the morning. He stared at them through the windshield, realizing they had no idea off what was happening. An angry black face bared teeth through the open driver's side window. "Keep your goddamn hands off the car, motherfucking bum." He floored the pedal. Jack heard the engine roar and jumped as the Buick ran the red and swerved back into the lane, getting like a slot car. The jibes, in high, ridiculing feminine voices, echoed behind. He stood in the crosswalk, arms open. No, they thought he was a derelict, more of the human garbage washed up on the streets of downtown Hollywood, like the winos in the Omicron, like fatigue coat, you're wrong slash. He shouted, and his voice bounced off. Thrifties, and the Burger King, and the car wash, and the bag lady sleeping on Thebes' stop bench, paid no attention. They all thought he was just another loon, yelling in an intersection at 3 in the morning, and he felt the crushing weight off, need to tell everyone the truth. But the light changed, and he kept on moving because that was what he was trained to do. He was still the point man, the patrol's maverick. His job was to make practical decisions fast and act on them instinctively. As soon as he made the curb, he thought he spotted a stray roach struggling up his pant leg in the wet neon glow-off "Don't Walk" sign, and his fist instantly responded, swooping down to smash it. His plastic leg resounded with its characteristic drum-like thunk as his hand flat tended the bug into non-existence. He fancied he felt a reflex tremor from the leg nerves that no longer existed either. His body skipped a breath, and he froze. The sound his fist had made against his plastic leg was subtly deeper than usual, the difference in pitch between an empty glass and a filled one. Jack's mouth dried up with amazing speed. His plastic leg has hollow, like the leg of a Ken doll. Lots open to space down there where he could not see or feel. He tore open his pea-coat and jerked loose the straps that held the prosthetic limb buckled fast to his ruined flesh. From somewhere down there another roach-free fell to land on its back, legs wiggling. Jack pivoted on the crutch and stomped it into the sidewalk cracks. Keeling madly forward, he grabbed the its jointed plastic ankle and heaved it in a clumsy cartwheel toward a litter basket next to the stoplight pole. He did not see it land. He was watching another roach scurry into the sewer grating, wondering if it had come from him. He left the leg there, jutting crookedly out off the litter basket, looking like a vaudevillian joke. By dawn, some bag lady would scavenge it. Under the chancy light of the mercury vapor lamps, he had no way of telling whether the bugs he now saw scuttering about on his abandoned leg were from within the leg itself, or from the garbage already stinking in the overfilled basket. They swarmed and capered as though cheated. Using his crutch, rather proficiently he thought, he moved purpose fully on into the slick, black night. His pant leg fluttered crazily because was empty, and for that very reason he paid it no mind.